My name is Dr. Elias Thorne. I am, or I was, a lead cognitive linguist for the Advanced Research Institute. At least that's what it said on my paycheck. That's a lie. It was all a lie. I'm a dead man. The moment this file uploads, the people who hired me will find me and erase me. But it doesn't matter. The world needs to know what they found, what they're hiding. 6 months ago, I wasn't a whistleblower. I was a respected scientist. I believed in the system. Then they flew me to the facility, a black hole on the map, hundreds of feet beneath a mountain in Utah. They told me I was recruited for the most important communication project in human history. They told me they had an asset. They called it an unclassified primate, an anomaly. They lied. It wasn't an it was a him. And we weren't just studying him. We were interrogating him. They called him Subject Zero. I never got to give him a name, but he gave me one. He called me the Scared Man. He learned our language in 3 weeks. He learned to read in 4. And on week 8, he did something that changed everything. He looked at the two-way mirror in the containment cell. Then he looked at me, and he spoke. He didn't grunt. He didn't sign. He spoke. He said, "I know you are recording, but who is listening? This is the story of how we found something smarter than us, and how it tore us apart from the inside out." Okay, here is the next section. This chapter will cover the narrator's recruitment and his first realization that this is not a normal scientific project. Stage 2, The Journey, The Interrogation's Biography. Chapter 1, The Summons, The Incident. It started, as these things always do, with a man in a black suit. His name was Agent Graves. He showed up at my university office on a rainy Tuesday. I was a tenured professor in Boston, a leading expert in primate linguistics. My work was theoretical. I wrote papers, I gave lectures. I was comfortable. Graves was not a man built for comfort. He was tall, thin, and had the kind of eyes that didn't blink. "Dr. Elias Thorne," he'd said, not asking but confirming. He didn't show me a badge. He just sat. "We have a situation, a communication problem. We've been told you're the man who can solve it." "A situation? What kind?" I was annoyed. It was office hours. "A national security situation," he said, and the air in the room changed. "We have found a new variable, one we don't understand. We need you to teach us how to talk to it." It was the most surreal conversation of my life. He was vague, but the money he offered wasn't. It was a blank check from a defense contractor I'd never heard of. He told me it would be a 6-month contract. I'd be isolated, no phones, no internet, no contact with the outside world. "Dr. Thorne," he said, leaning in, "humanity has been the only intelligent species on this planet for 50,000 years. What if I told you that's no longer the case?" How could I say no? The academic hubris, the sheer curiosity. It was a trap designed perfectly for me. 2 days later, I was on a black unmarked jet. My windows were covered. When we landed, we were indoors in a massive hangar. The air was dry and cold. We drove underground for what felt like 30 minutes. They called it the facility. It wasn't a lab, it was a prison. A concrete box buried under a mountain. The soldiers in the halls weren't carrying rifles. They were carrying heavy-duty tranquilizer guns. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hiss of air scrubbers and the beep of electronic keypads. Graves led me to an observation room. It was dark, dominated by a massive two-way mirror. "This is why you're here," Graves said, gesturing to the glass. I stepped forward. The room on the other side was large, sterile white and filled with trees, real full-grown pine trees. It was a biodome, a captured piece of forest, surrounded by padded white walls, and in the middle of it, sitting on a reinforced steel bench, was Subject Zero. My first thought was, it's a hoax. It had to be a man in a suit. But my logical brain, the scientist, was already dismantling that idea. He is magnificent. At least 8.5 feet tall, covered in thick, dark brown hair, matted with, was that mud? His muscles were coiled, impossibly dense. He wasn't a primate, not any kind I'd ever seen. He was something else, something parallel. He was examining a children's toy, one of those plastic puzzles with different shaped blocks. We call it a Sasquatch," Graves whispered next to me. "This one was captured in the high Alaskan wilderness 2 months ago, after it attacked a covert monitoring station. It didn't use claws. It dismantled the station. It tore open a steel bulkhead with its bare hands to get at the batteries. It seemed to like the energy." I couldn't speak. I was just watching. The creature, Levi, no, I didn't call him that yet. Zero. He was holding the cube-shaped block. He looked at the square hole. He looked at the circular hole. He's not very bright, is he? I said, my voice shaking. He can't figure it out. Just watch, Graves said. Zero put the cube down. He looked at his own massive hand. He extended one finger. He looked at the cube. He looked at the square hole. Then he did it again, faster. Finger, cube, hole. Finger, cube, hole. He wasn't trying to solve the puzzle. He was counting. He was establishing a base 10 number system using the objects. One finger, one cube, one hole. My God, I whispered. He's doing math. He's been doing it for 3 days, Graves said, his voice grim. He won't put the block in the hole. We think he finds it illogical. He's bored. He's been counting everything. The tiles on the wall. The number of seconds the lights are on. He's a pattern seeker. Zero suddenly stopped. He looked up, not at the glass, but at the glass. He was looking right at me. He couldn't see me. Could he? He stood up. The sheer size of him was terrifying. He walked to the glass. I could see my own pale, terrified reflection in his dark, intelligent, ancient eyes. He was 10 times my size, a creature of myth. He raised one massive hand, and he placed it on the glass. Then he made a sound, a low, deep rumble. He's aggressive, I said, stepping back. No, Graves said, his eyes gleaming. He's not. That's his hello. We need you to teach him ours. We need to know what he knows, Doctor. We need to know how many more of them are out there. My first sessions were a clinical disaster. I was a scientist, so I followed the primate cognition playbook. I sat in the darkened observation room, Graves breathing down my neck, and I initiated simple association tests. On the large screen inside Zero's biodome, I'd flash an image, a tree. Then I'd say tree over the intercom. Zero, who had been sitting by his small waterfall, didn't even look. He was insulted. He was being treated like a gorilla, and he knew it. He's not responding, Doctor, Graves said, his voice flat. This isn't working. He's not responding because he's bored, I snapped back. We're showing a creature who lived his entire life in a forest a picture of a tree. It's idiotic. We're the ones failing the test, not him. I changed tactics. I had to assume he was an alien, a new intelligence. I had to find a universal language, math. I went back to his first test. The blocks. I programmed the screen. On the left side, I showed 1 dot. On the right, I showed the numeral 1, then 2 dots and the numeral 2. The moment the screen lit up, Zero stopped pacing. He watched. He tilted his head. I ran the sequence, 1 through 9. Then I reset, but this time I flashed the numeral 3. I left the other side of the screen blank. It was a test, a quiz. Zero stood up. He walked to the screen, so close I could see the condensation of his breath on the glass. He looked at the 3. He raised his massive hand. He pressed 3 fingers against the screen. My breath caught. My God! Graves was silent. Zero wasn't just counting. He was communicating. He was showing me he understood the concept of 3. The next week we moved past math. We moved to language. This was my field. I started with simple pictographic symbols on a massive touchscreen panel they installed in his cell. The symbol for water, the symbol for food. He learned them in an hour. He'd tap the symbol, and a dispenser would give him what he wanted. But the symbols weren't enough. I needed words. This was week 3. I replaced the food symbol with the written English word, F-O-O-D. I watched, my heart pounding. Would he understand the abstraction? Would he get that these new symbols meant the same thing? Zero walked to the panel. He looked at the new word. He looked at the old, now disabled, food symbol next to it. He looked back at the word. He tapped F-O-O-D. The dispenser clicked, releasing a fish. He didn't eat it. He just stared at the word. He tapped it again. Another fish. He now possessed the word. He'd learned to read. In 3 weeks. This is impossible, I whispered. A human child takes years to make that cognitive leap. Good, Graves said. Now get him to talk. That's when the power dynamic shifted. Zero wasn't the subject anymore. I was. He'd sit in his cell, just watching me through the 2-way mirror. He knew I was there. He could hear my voice, smell my fear. He began to test me. One morning I came in and he had taken the touchscreen panel, a 200-pound device bolted to the wall, and ripped it out. He was holding it, looking at the wires in the back. The guards rushed in with tranquilizer rifles. "No, don't shoot!" I yelled. Zero wasn't being destructive. He was inquisitive. He wanted to know how the magic box worked. He dropped it when the guards aimed at him and rumbled, a sound of annoyance. He was testing the boundaries. He was testing us. It was that afternoon I tried to humanize him. "Agent Graves," I said, "we cannot keep calling him Subject Zero. It's demeaning. It's imprecise. He's a person. We need to call him Adam or something, to build trust." Graves turned to me, his eyes dead. "Doctor, your job is not to build trust. It is to build a tool. Subject Zero is its designation. It is an it. It is not a he. You are a linguist, not a zookeeper. You are here to get us the data. What does it know? Where are the others? Do not ever humanize the asset. Are we clear?" I was clear. I was a tool just as much as Zero was. But the next day, Zero proved he was more than a tool. He had been listening to our voices over the intercom for weeks. He had been watching our mouths through the glass. I was in the observation room alone, running a new diagnostic. I flashed the word WATER on his screen. He looked at the word. He looked at the empty water trough in his cell. Then he turned, looked right at where I was sitting, and his throat vibrated. He made a sound, not a rumble, a word. Guttural, deep and heavy, like gravel being dragged across stone. Water. He had just spoken his first word. He hadn't just learned to read, he'd learned to speak. I scrambled for the microphone. Yes, water. I hit the button to fill his trough. The water began to flow. Zero watched the water. Then he looked back at the glass. He pointed at me. Scared man. He had named me. The moment I reported that Zero could speak, everything changed. I thought it was a breakthrough. I thought we were about to enter a new era of understanding. I was a fool. Graves and his superiors didn't see a person. They saw a data breach. "He can talk," Graves said, his eyes lit with a cold fire I hadn't seen before. "He's been holding back. He's been studying us. The experiment is over, Doctor." The interrogation begins. Interrogation? I was shocked. You can't interrogate him. He's just learning. We have to build a rapport. "We have no time for rapport," Graves snapped. "He is an unknown entity with unknown capabilities and unknown allies. For all we know, he's the scout for an invasion. We need to know what he knows, and we need to know it yesterday." The very next day, the biodome was altered. The trees were still there, but the observation room was different. New equipment had been installed. High-definition video cameras, sensitive multi-array microphones, and in my observation booth, a new station was set up, a desk with a single red button. "You will continue to be the primary interface, Dr. Thorne," Graves explained, his hands behind his back. "He trusts you, or at least he's comfortable with you. But from now on, every session will be fully documented." It's always been documented, hasn't it?" I asked. "Not like this. Not to this specification. Every session will be live-fed to command. We are building a file, a psychological profile." He pointed to the red button. "You will press this at the start of your session. You will press it at the end. It is not a request, Doctor. It is a federal mandate." The red light on the new camera inside the cell was bright, unblinking. It was an intrusion, an eye that wasn't mine. Zero noticed it immediately. I walked into the observation booth for our first official session. Zero was sitting on his bench, not looking at the screen, but at the new camera lens mounted near the ceiling. I pressed the red button. A small recording icon appeared on my monitor. "Good morning, Zero," I said over the intercom, my voice stiff, unnatural. He didn't look at me. He just kept staring at the camera. I have some new words for us to review." Zero slowly turned his massive head, not to the screen, but to the two-way mirror where I hid. He looked right at me. "You are scared," he rumbled, his voice low and heavy. I'm not scared, Zero. We have work to do." "No," he said. He pointed. Not at me. He pointed at the new camera. "It is loud." I froze. "What do you mean, loud? You can't hear it." "It sees," he rumbled. He got up. He was agitated. He walked around the cell, but his eyes kept flicking back to the new red light. "The other glass case is quiet." He pointed at the two-way mirror. It is just you. He pointed back at the camera. That is them. He knew. He somehow understood the qualitative difference between being observed by me and being recorded by an unknown, external them. The interrogation was a disaster. He refused to cooperate. He wouldn't look at the screen. He wouldn't answer my questions. He just sat in the corner, staring at the camera lens, a new, cold intelligence in his eyes. He's stonewalling us, Graves said, frustrated at the end of the day. He knows we're watching. Of course he knows, I argued. We've introduced a threat. That camera is a gun as far as he's concerned. It's a predator. It's an unknown. We've broken his trust. Then get it back, Graves ordered, or we'll find more persuasive methods. The persuasive methods began 2 days later. When Zero refused to engage with the terminal, they'd cut his food rations. When he sat in the corner, they'd lower the temperature in the biodome, making it uncomfortably cold. He endured it. He was a prisoner, and he knew it. This went on for a week. He was growing thinner, weaker, but he was stubborn. He would not speak, not to me, and certainly not to the camera. This is barbaric, I told Graves. This is torture. It's not going to work. He'll die before he talks to it. Then you failed, Graves replied, and you're done here. That night I did something I wasn't authorized to do. After Graves and the primary team had left, I went back to the observation booth. I looked at the red button. I looked at the camera feed. I did not press the button. I opened the intercom. Zero, I whispered. He was huddled in the corner, trying to stay warm. He looked up, his eyes dull. Zero, the red light. It's off. It's just me. He watched me, his breath fogging in the cold air. I'm sorry, Zero. I can't stop them. But the camera is off. It's just the scared man. He stood up slowly. He walked to the two-way mirror, so close I could see the frost on his fur. He put his hand on the glass. Why? He rumbled, his voice pained. They want to know things. They're afraid of you. He looked at the dark lens of the camera. Then he looked back at me. And this is the moment. The one I can't ever erase. He spoke, his voice clear and no longer broken. It was smooth, deep and perfect. He had been faking how poorly he spoke. I know what they want, Elias, he said. He used my name. I had never told him my name. He must have heard Graves say it once over an intercom. They are not afraid of me, he continued, his voice a perfect, terrifying rumble. They are afraid of You're what? I stammered, my hand shaking. The others, the ones who are not trapped. My blood ran cold. There are more. Zero looked at the camera. He looked at me and he smiled. It was not a human smile. It was all teeth. It's time to go, he said. I was confused. Go where? He didn't answer. He just looked at the camera, then at me. Then came the alarm. A sudden blaring klaxon that echoed through the facility. Red lights flashed. Graves burst into the observation room. What did you do? What did you say to it? Nothing, we were just talking. You weren't recording, Graves screamed, pointing at the dark monitor. You were off book. Look, I pointed at the screen. Zero was gone. The biodome was empty. He's in the cell. He's just hiding, Graves yelled. I looked at the corner of the screen. The touchscreen panel, the one bolted to the wall, was gone. The wall behind it was ripped open, showing a dark, concrete utility tunnel. He didn't just rip it off the wall, I whispered, staring in horror. He waited. He waited until I was here. He waited until the camera was off. Why? Graves was frantically hitting buttons, calling for security. Because, I said, the terrible realization dawning. He didn't want them to see. He was protecting me. He was waiting for me to be his alibi. Graves looked at me, his face pale. An alibi for what? And then, right on cue, the title line. The moment from the thumbnail. The creature. He spoke. It wasn't over the intercom, it was in the room. For this, a voice rumbled. Graves and I turned. Zero was standing in the doorway of the observation booth. He had crawled through the tunnel system, through the ventilation shafts. The 8.5-foot creature had just snuck through a 24-inch duct. He was standing there, his head stooped under the low ceiling. He was holding a piece of the wall panel in his hand. He looked at Graves. He looked at me, then he looked at the recording console, at the bright red button. He reached out his massive, scarred finger, and he pressed it. The recording light flashed on. Zero looked right into the main observation camera, the one feeding to command. "Hello," he said, his voice a perfect deep baritone that rattled the console. "My name is not Zero. My name is Old." Then he looked at me, at Graves. He looked at the window that viewed the empty cell. "I am leaving," he said, "but first," he looked back at the camera, "I have a message for the people who are listening." And he began to talk. He began to tell them everything. Okay, here is the next chapter. This is the central, pivotal moment of the story, where Zero takes control of the narrative and reveals the truth. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The creature's story. The world stopped. The klaxon alarm was still blaring, but it felt distant, muffled. The only thing that was real was the creature, Zero, standing in our control room. He wasn't a beast, he wasn't a monster, he was an ambassador, and we were the ones in the cage. Graves, the man who was always in control, was fumbling. He was reaching for the panic button under his desk, his hand shaking. "Do not," Zero rumbled without looking at him. His voice was so low it vibrated in my teeth. "If you press that, the men with the gas will come. And if they come, I will have to break them, and you will not get to hear the rest of the message." Graves froze, his hand hovering over the button. "Thank you," Zero said. He turned his full attention back to the recording camera. His huge, dark eyes, ancient and intelligent, stared into the lens. He knew he wasn't just talking to a machine. He was talking to a room full of generals and directors miles away. "You call me Subject Zero," he began. "This is incorrect. I am not the first. I am just the first you have seen." He paused as if listening to an echo I couldn't hear. "My people, we have been here. We were here before the ice. We were here when you were still painting your hands on cave walls. We watched you build your cities of stone and glass. We watched you learn to listen." He pointed at the recording console. "You learned to listen to the stars, but you never learned to listen to the ground." I was transfixed. My scientific mind was racing. "An archaic hominid? A parallel species? You call us Sasquatch about Yeti, Bigfoot. These are your names for a shadow, a myth. We are the silent. We live in the places you forget, the deep woods, the high ice, the dark water. We have stayed separate. It is our first and only law." "Then why?" I whispered, my voice a dry crackle. I couldn't help myself. "Why are you here? Why did you attack the station?" Zero turned his massive head to look at me. It was the first time I felt his true ancient intelligence and his pity. "The scared man asks a question," he said, as if to the camera. "I will answer it." He looked back at the lens. "I did not attack your station. I unpacked it. You placed a loud machine on the grave of my daughter." The words hit me like a physical blow. "A grave? You did not know," he continued. "You are loud and blind. You make noise, but you do not see. For 10,000 years that was acceptable. You were children, playing in a house that was not yours. We were the parents, letting you play as long as you did not break anything of value." He stepped closer to the camera. I could see the reflection of the red recording light in his dark pupils. "But now some of you have broken things, and worse, some of my people have decided to break you." Graves and I locked eyes. What did he just say? "There is a schism," Zero said. "A disagreement. Some of us believe you have become too loud, too dangerous, that your fire is threatening to burn down the whole house. They are the first. They believe it is time to cull, to reset the experiment." My mind flashed to 100 unsolved mysteries. The Mary Celeste, the disappearance of entire villages in the 16th century, the sudden, inexplicable collapse of the Greenland Viking colony. Was that them? "They are not like me," Zero said, and for the first time I heard something in his voice. Was it anger? "They are pure. They do not talk. They act. They move under the ice. They move in the deep sea. They will not send a warning." So you were captured?" I asked. "They captured you?" "No," Zero said, looking at me. "The first captured me. I spoke out against the cull. I argued that you, humanity, were more than just noise, that you had music." He gestured vaguely as if remembering my primate cognition tests. "That you had potential. They disagreed. They cast me out. They hunted me. I ran for a long time." He looked back at the camera. "And then I found your little, loud box. your monitoring station, and I realized you were listening. You were looking for us. You were afraid." He put his hand on the console. "So I stopped running. I let your poachers find me. I let them shoot me. Though I admit, I did not expect it to hurt so much." He touched the faint scar on his shoulder. "And I let your soldiers, your feds, capture me, because I needed to get in. I needed to talk to the people who listen." He leaned in, his massive, scarred face filling the camera. "I am here," he dumbled, "to give you a warning. The first, they are coming. They see your new fire." He tapped the nuclear missiles icon on a world threat monitor Graves had on the wall. "Eep. And they have decided you are no longer children. You are a vermin. They will not make a sound. They will not send a messenger. They will just erase." The room was silent, save for the hum of the console and the distant, now louder sound of boots running in the hallway outside. "So," Graves said, his voice a reedy whisper, You're asking for our help. You want to form an alliance?" Zero turned, and the most terrifying, inhuman, and ancient expression crossed his features. He smiled. "No, Agent Graves," he said. "I am not here to ask for your help. I have spent 8 weeks studying you. I have learned your language, your mathematics, your psychology, your fears. I am here to see if you are worth saving." The klaxon alarm suddenly went dead. The silence was absolute. And then from the hallway came the sound, not of boots, not of guns. It was a thump, a heavy hydraulic hiss. Zero's head snapped toward the door. The smile was gone. He wasn't afraid. "They are here," he whispered. "Who?" I yelled. "Who's here? The first?" "No," Zero rumbled, his eyes wide with a terror I had never seen. He looked at the camera one last time, his voice a desperate plea. "Not the first, the third, the ones who broke me, the ones who built this place." Before I could even process what he meant, the control room door didn't open. It was torn from its hinges, the metal shrieking, and hurled across the room, smashing the two-way mirror into a million pieces. Soldiers flooded in, but they weren't the ones I'd seen before. They were in massive, black-bodied, hydraulic exosuits. They were 8 feet tall with red glowing visors and no faces. They weren't carrying tranquilizer guns. They were carrying weapons that looked like mining equipment. Heavy sonic resonators. They were feds, but they were not Graves' feds. Graves looked at them, his face ashen. No, they weren't supposed to be involved. This was my operation." One of the exosuits pointed a weapon at him. "Your operation is over, Director. The asset has been compromised. It is scheduled for decommissioning." It's talking," I screamed. "It gave us a warning. We have to listen." The exosuit turned its red eye to me. "The linguist is also compromised. Decommission both of them." Zero, who had been a god a moment before, was now a cornered animal. He looked at the exosuits. He looked at me. He was trapped. But I was the scared man. And I finally realized what I had to do. Decommission both of them. The words from the exosuit speaker were flat, metallic, and final. This wasn't a containment team. This was an execution squad. Graves, the man who had been my jailer, was now just another prisoner. "You can't do this," he shouted, fumbling for his own sidearm. "I am Director Graves. I have oversight." "Your oversight is revoked, Director," the lead exosuit said. It raised its sonic resonator. "This is the moment, the one that plays in my head, over and over." Zero, the creature who had just confessed to being a refugee from an ancient warring species, looked at the exosuits. He looked at Graves. He looked at me, the scared man. He had 2 choices: fight his way out or surrender to this new, more terrifying enemy. He did neither. He chose a third path. "Elias," he rumbled, his voice so low only I could hear it. "You had listened. Now you must run." "Run? Run where?" I yelled. "We're hundreds of feet underground." "I am not running," Zero said. "I am broadcasting, but I need a delay." Before I could ask what he meant, he acted. He didn't attack the exosuits. He attacked the room. With a roar that was pure calculated rage, he grabbed the billion-dollar recording console, the one that was still dutifully recording everything, and hurled it at the main gassed observation window. The armored glass, designed to withstand a tank, cracked and bowed. "Asset is hostile. Open fire," the exosuit commander yelled. The room erupted in a high-pitched, agonizing shriek. It wasn't gunfire, it was the sonic weapons. They fired waves of concussion that hit me in the chest, knocking the air from my lungs. But the sound was not meant for me. It was meant for Zero. He roared in agony, clutching his head, his sensitive ears bleeding. But he didn't fall. He pushed through it. He was a freight train of pure will. He grabbed Agent Graves, the man who had interrogated him, the man who had starved him, by the tactical vest. "Graves!" I screamed. Zero wasn't attacking him. He threw Graves at me. The 200-pound man hit me like a sack of bricks. We both collapsed into the hallway just outside the control room door. What is he doing?" Graves gasped, his face pale with shock. I looked back inside. It was a scene from hell. Zero was on his knees, the sonic waves pummeling him. But he was smiling, all teeth, right at the exosuit commander. And I saw it. The console he had thrown. It was still connected by a single, thick power cable. The red recording light was still on. It was all still being broadcast. He's creating a diversion," I whispered, horrified. "He's not trying to escape. He's sacrificing himself. He's giving us time to get out. He's making sure Command sees this. He's making sure they see who is doing the decommissioning." What are you talking about?" Graves panted. "The third. The ones who built this place," I screamed, pulling him. "He wants them recorded." Zero saw me. He was on his last legs, his body convulsing. He made one last gesture. He pointed not at the exit but at the other direction, a small dark maintenance tunnel I'd never seen. "Go," he mouthed. And then he did the last thing I expected. He grabbed the severed sparking power cable from the console. He stood up to his full magnificent height. He roared, "You are not silent!" And he plunged the live high-voltage cable directly into the lead exosuit's visor. The explosion was blinding. It wasn't just electricity. The suit's power core detonated. The resulting blast tore through the control room, a wave of fire and shrapnel. Graves and I were thrown backward down the hall. The last thing I saw, before the fire consumed the room, was Zero. He wasn't burning. He was gone. He had used the blast as cover, or he had been vaporized by it. I didn't know. I didn't care. All I knew was that he had bought me and Graves, his two jailers, time. "This way!" Graves yelled, his professional demeanor finally cracking into pure animal panic. "The emergency stairwell!" "No," I said, my mind racing. "That's what they expect. He pointed at the maintenance tunnel." "You're going to trust it," Graves shrieked. "It's a monster. It just killed all of them." "It didn't kill them," I yelled back, crawling on my hands and knees toward the dark, narrow opening. "It exposed them. And it just saved us. It called me the scared man. I'm done being scared." I plunged into the darkness of the maintenance shaft. I heard Graves behind me cursing, but he followed. He knew, just as I did, that whatever was coming down that main hallway was far worse than a dark tunnel. We ran. We ran for what felt like miles in the suffocating dark, with no idea where we were going. We were just following the advice of a creature that may have just died for us. We ran for what felt like hours. The tunnel was a cramped metal service shaft, barely 4 feet high. We were crawling, scrambling, our knees and hands raw from the metal grating. The air was thick with ancient dust and the smell of ozone. Behind us, there was nothing. No footsteps, no alarms. Just a dead, terrifying silence. The facility had just eaten an 8-foot-tall exosuit team, and then it just stopped. The silence was worse than the klaxon. "Where are we going, Thorne?" Graves hissed, his voice a dry rasp. He had lost his suit jacket, his tie was gone, and the man of perfect control was just a terrified, sweating bureaucrat. "We're running in the dark. We're headed down. We're going to be buried alive." He pointed this way, I panted, stopping to catch my breath. My lungs burned. Zero wanted us to go this way. "It's a monster, Thorne. It's playing a game. It probably ate those exosuits. It's leading us into a trap, a nest." He called me Elias," I whispered. I hadn't even processed it until now. He was being tortured, and he waited for me. He waited for me to be his witness. He didn't run when he could have. He waited to make that broadcast. This isn't a trap. This is the only way. The tunnel suddenly opened up. We fell out, tumbling into a vast, open space. It was old. It wasn't part of the modern facility. The walls weren't concrete. They were rough-hewn rock like an old mine shaft. And it was ancient. There were thick, black cables, as thick as my body, snaking along the walls, covered in decades of dust. The air smelled of sulfur. What is this place?" Graves whispered, pulling out a weak penlight. "This is what Zero meant," I said, looking at the cables. "The ones who built this place. This is a geothermal power station," Graves said, his analytical mind kicking back in. "An old one. A failed project from the 70s. It was decommissioned. Sealed." "No," I said, touching a cable. It was warm. "It wasn't decommissioned. It was repurposed. This is their power source. This is what's keeping this whole place off the grid. This is how they hide." A heavy hydraulic hiss echoed from the tunnel we'd just left. "They're coming." Graves's voice was a squeak. "They know we're here." We ran. We found a heavy steel door like a bulkhead on a submarine, marked with a symbol I didn't recognize. Not a government seal. It was just a triangle with a circle inside. Graves fumbled for his keycard. "It's not working. My credentials, they're not high enough." "It's not a government door, Graves," I shouted as the hiss grew louder. "He told us. The third." The heavy rhythmic thump, thump, thump of an exosuit was coming down the hall. It wasn't in a hurry. It was hunting. I looked at the keypad. It wasn't a card scanner. It was an old numeric pad. 12 buttons. A code. Graves was frantic, pounding on the door. It could be anything. A million combinations. "No," I said, my heart pounding. I was remembering. The control room, the first day, he was counting finger, cube, hole, finger, cube, hole. "He wasn't just counting, Graves," I whispered. "He was teaching me." "What are you talking about, Thorne? You're insane." The red glowing visor of the exosuit appeared at the far end of the mine shaft. It stopped. It saw us. "He was teaching me the code," I said. I looked at the keypad. I pressed the first key. 1. The exosuit raised its sonic weapon. I pressed the second key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. "Thorne, what are you doing? That's not a code." I pressed the third key. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. The Fibonacci sequence?" Graves whispered, his eyes wide. That's insane." "He's not just a monster," I panted, my fingers flying. "He's a mathematician." The keypad flashed green. I grabbed the wheel lock and turned. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a small dark elevator car. We piled in. "Where does it go?" Graves yelled. "Who cares?" I hit the only button on the panel, a downward arrow. The door hissed shut, just as the first sonic blast from the exosuit hit it, making the entire elevator shudder. We were falling. A fast, controlled descent, deeper into the earth. "We did it," Graves breathed, slumping against the wall. "We're safe." "We're not safe," I said, my voice shaking. "We're just deeper." The elevator stopped with a groan. The doors opened. It wasn't a tunnel. It wasn't a base. It was a cave. A massive natural cavern, lit by a faint blue phosphorescent glow from moss on the walls, and I could hear water, a river, somewhere in the darkness. He did it," I whispered. "Zero. He led us to the outside. He led us to the world, under the world." Graves looked into the vast alien darkness. "Thorne, this isn't an escape. This is a grave." "It's a choice," I said. I stepped out of the elevator and onto the soft, mossy ground. "They can have the facility. We have—" The path he showed us. Graves looked back at the elevator, at the sealed metal door. He knew the exosuits would be waiting for him if he went back up. He cursed, then stepped out into the glowing darkness with me. The elevator doors hissed shut behind us, plunging us into a new world, and as the click of the door echoed, I heard it. Faintly from miles above us, carried through the rock, I heard a roar. It wasn't a roar of pain. It was a roar of victory. Zero hadn't just broadcasted his message. He hadn't just exposed the third. He hadn't just saved us. He had won. He was out. And he had just told the entire world why. Now all I had to do was survive long enough to see the fallout. It took me 6 months to get here, 6 months of crawling. Graves and we didn't last long together. He was a man of the surface, a man of control. The darkness, the silence of the deep earth, it broke him. We found an underground river, and he was convinced it was the way out. I wasn't so sure. It felt too easy. I told him I'd wait. I'd watch. He called me a coward. The scared man. To the very end, he said. He built a raft out of, well, You don't want to know. And he floated away into the dark. I never saw him again. But I stayed. I stayed in the glowing cavern. And I listened, the way Zero had taught me. I wasn't alone. The first, the silent. They knew I was there. I'd find gifts. A fish left on a rock. Fresh, clear water. They were watching me. They were studying me. The way we had studied Zero. I was the asset now. And finally, after 6 months of silence, they left me a trail. It led up through tunnels and shafts I never could have found until I emerged 3 nights ago through a drainage culvert in the middle of nowhere, the middle of the Arizona desert. I hitchhiked. I stole money from a gas station. And I bought this laptop because I knew what I'd find, the earthquake, the sinkhole, the decommissioned research facility. They're all lies. I know what it was. It wasn't an earthquake. It was him. It was Zero. That was the sound of him winning. My broadcast and his broadcast and the one he made, it didn't just go to command. He was smarter than that. The console, the cables he ripped out. No, he wasn't just broadcasting to the feds. He was broadcasting to everyone. That recording, his message, it's out there on your servers, in your data centers. It's probably flagged as corrupted data or static, but it's there. Find it. Find the recording. I'm posting this from a public Wi-Fi. In 5 minutes, they'll be here. The third, the men in the exosuits, the ones who really run things. They'll find this motel. They'll find this room. But they won't find me. Thorne looks past the camera at the motel room door. He's not scared. Zero called me the scared man. He was right, I was scared. I was scared of losing my tenure. I was scared of Agent Graves. I was scared of a creature in a cage. I'm not scared anymore. Zero didn't just give me a warning for humanity. He didn't just give me an escape route. He gave me a purpose. He showed me that there are things in this world older, smarter, and stronger than our feds, our governments, our little loud machines. They are the silent. They are the first. And they are watching, and now so one of them is free. Thorne leans in close, his eyes burning with a strange new light. He is no longer Dr. Thorne, the academic. He is a prophet. He is a witness. The feds were interrogating a Bigfoot, and then it realized it was being recorded. He spoke. He gave them a warning. And now, I am too. Look for the file. Look for the recording. Find the truth. Find it before the first decide we're not worth saving. Find it before the third find you. He reaches out his shaking hand, not to turn the camera off, but to tap the laptop's screen right over the lens. "Hello," he whispers. "My name is Old." He hits a key. The screen cuts to a single stark word. "Uploading."